Every generation has its fire. In the 1,960 seconds, it was Aretha demanding respect. In the 70 seconds, Donna Summer turning pain into disco. And in the 90 seconds, that fire was Lisa Left Eye Lopes. When TLC hit the airwaves, it wasn't just music, it was rebellion with rhythm. 3 black girls from Atlanta wearing condoms on their clothes, rapping about safe sex, money, and self-respect in a decade that still wanted women to stay quiet and smile. They called themselves T-Boz, Left Eye, and Chili, but together they were a force. Too hip for R&B, too soulful for hip-hop, and too real for the world to handle. Their songs weren't love letters, they were manifestos. No scrubs, creep, waterfalls. Every lyric was a mirror for young black women who were done being silenced. But at the center of that storm, behind the platinum records, magazine covers, and global fame, was a woman who carried her own kind of chaos. Lisa Lopes wasn't just the voice of rebellion, she was rebellion. A girl from Philadelphia with a fractured home, a soldier's daughter with bruises you couldn't always see. She grew up learning that music was the only place where pain could sound beautiful. Her friends called her Left Eye because that eye had a sparkle. Différent, dangereux, divine. But maybe it wasn't just her eye that was different. Maybe it was the way she saw the world. To the world, she was wild, unpredictable, magnetic, brilliant, broken. To herself, she was just trying to survive the noise. And that's where her story begins. Not in the fame, but in the fire. Because every legend starts as a flame, and some flames burn too bright to last. Before the lights, before the platinum records, there was a little girl sitting at an old piano in North Philly, teaching herself melodies no one else could hear. Her name was Lisa Nicole Lopes, born the 27th of May, 1971, the oldest of 3 children. Her father, Ronald Lopes, was a U.S. Army staff sergeant, strict, proud, and broken inside. Her mother, Wanda, was the soft voice that tried to hold the storm together. Their home was filled with 2 things, music and fear. Ronald played in the Army band, but when the uniform came off, the man who came home was a different kind of drummer. He ruled the house with fists, not rhythm. He'd line the kids up for inspection, demand they play their instruments perfectly, and when they missed a note, they'd pay for it. Lisa loved him and feared him in equal measure. He was the first man who ever made her feel small, and the first man who taught her that music could save her life. At 5 years old, she could play piano by ear. At 6, she wrote her first song. At 7, she could drink beer, because that's what her father gave her. Tiny sips of poison disguised as bonding. When the fighting between her parents got worse, Lisa would take her younger brother and sister and hide in a closet, humming lullabies to drown out the yelling. Music was her armor. It was the only thing she could control. By 13, she had run away from home more than once. Each time she left, she'd end up back in her grandmother's house. Quiet, safe, full of gospel records and love. There, she found the kind of peace her parents never could. But the dreams were bigger than Philly. Lisa wanted more than safety. She wanted to be seen. At 17, she packed a small suitcase, kissed her grandmother goodbye, and left Philadelphia for good. Her boyfriend had told her about Atlanta, a city rising with sound, where hip-hop and R&B were melting together, where producers were searching for the next big voice. She didn't have money. She didn't have a plan. But she had that spark, that unstoppable, dangerous spark. When she arrived in Atlanta, she met a man who would change everything. Rico Wade, one of the founding producers of Organized Noise, the same crew that would later create the sound of Outkast and Goody Mob. He introduced her to a young manager, Ian Burr, who was putting together a female trio, a mix of R&B and hip-hop, a new kind of girl group that could dance, rap, and sing. They already had one member, Tion Watkins, a girl with a raspy voice from Des Moines, and another, named Crystal Jones. They needed a rapper, someone wild, sharp, and unpredictable. Lisa walked in wearing a dress, not the baggy tomboy look they wanted. But when she started to rap, the room stopped breathing. Every word hit like a heartbeat. Every rhyme sounded like rebellion. She didn't look the part. She was the part. That night, she became the third piece of the puzzle, the spark that turned a demo group into a movement. They didn't know it yet, but TLC was about to be born. And the girl from North Philly, who once hid in closets to escape her father's rage, was about to set the whole world on fire. Atlanta, in the early 90 seconds, was electric. It was a new sound, A new culture the South was rising, and three girls were about to change what the world thought women in hip-hop could be. They called themselves TLC, Tionne T-Boz Watkins, Lisa, Left Eye Lopes, and a new recruit, Rosanda Chili Thomas, handpicked to replace the group's original third member. Under the watch of R&B star Pebbles and her husband, producer L.A. Reid, TLC signed to LaFace Records, a label that would define the next decade of R&B. When they walked into the studio, they didn't act like rookies, they acted like revolutionaries. Bag jeans, backward caps, condoms sewn onto their clothes, a bold statement in an era when HIV was still whispered about in fear. They rapped, they sang, they danced, and they made it look effortless. Their debut album, Ooh Ooh, on the TLC tip, dropped in 1992 like a bomb. Songs like Ain't Dva Proud Dva Beck, Baby Baby Baby, and What About Your Friends were raw, fun, unapologetic. TLC wasn't trying to be sexy, they were trying to be real, and in doing so, they became sexier than anyone else on TV. Left Eye was the spark, the wild one with a condom over her left eye, a mix of danger and genius that no PR team could manufacture. She was the voice that told young women, you don't have to act cute to have power. But behind the camera, cracks were already forming. Pebbles controlled every dollar, every move, and soon the girls realized they were broke. Multi-platinum broke. Lisa didn't take betrayal lightly. She fought back, asked questions, and when Pebbles refused to renegotiate, TLC fired her only to find out that Pebbles owned the rights to their name. $3 million, $1 million per letter. That's what it cost them to stay TLC. Still, the music never stopped. They went on tour with MC Hammer and Mary J. Blige, and Left Eye, always fiery, got into fights backstage, once even threatening to shoot a dancer who hit her. But chaos didn't scare her, it inspired her. In 1994, while working on their next project, Lisa started seeing NFL star Andre Rison. It was passion mixed with gasoline, intense, toxic, unstoppable. Their love was headlines waiting to happen. Arguments, breakups, makeups, and one night, the fight that burned it all down. In June 1994, after discovering Andre had been unfaithful, Lisa set fire to his sneakers in a bathtub. The flames spread through the mansion, engulfing the home and her sanity. The next morning, she turned herself in, charged with felony arson, sentenced to probation and therapy. While she served her time, TLC was recording what would become their masterpiece, the album Crazy Sexy Cool. Lisa's contribution was limited, but her spirit haunted every song. It was her vision that inspired Waterfalls, a song about choices, consequences, and courage, one that would define not just TLC, but a generation. When the album dropped, it exploded. 12x Platinum, the first girl group to ever go diamond. Hits like Creep, Red Light Special, and Waterfalls owned the charts, and TLC became the voice of every woman who'd ever been hurt and still dared to love. Lisa had helped build an empire, but inside, she was still the girl from Philly, trying to keep her own fire from burning her alive. By the mid-1990 seconds, TLC had become untouchable. They weren't just the biggest girl group in America. They were America. Every radio, every club, every teenage bedroom pulsed with their sound. They had gone from singing about love to defining what power looked like for women in R&B. But success, especially for black women, always came with a bill. And when the bill arrived, it was devastating. Lisa once said, "Everyone thinks because you're famous, you're rich. But fame is an illusion, and illusions don't pay rent." It was true. They'd sold more than 10 million albums, but after the managers, lawyers, producers, and the label took their share, each girl was left with barely $50,000. Lisa broke it down publicly, holding up her contract for the world to see. It was brave. It was raw, and it made powerful people very uncomfortable. Behind closed doors, she confronted L.A. Reid and Clive Davis, demanding answers. They told her the money was tied up in recoupment costs, industry language for theft, wrapped in fine print. When she walked out of that meeting, she wasn't just angry, she was awake. The press called TLC's bankruptcy shocking. But to Lisa, it was liberation, a chance to burn the system that had been burning her all along. Inside the group, cracks became canyons. T-Boz battled sickle cell anemia. Chili wrestled with motherhood and heartbreak. And Lisa? She was shifting, turning from artist to philosopher, from performer to prophet. In her journals, she wrote, "I'm not crazy. I just hear the truth louder than most." She founded Left Eye Productions. Signing young black girls, she called her Little Sisters. She taught them about publishing rights, about how to own their voice in a world that feeds on silence. She even bought her friends' website domains, years before anyone cared about the internet, because she understood ownership wasn't just money, it was power. But that same brilliance made her an outsider. She spoke about energy, spirit, and rebirth, while the rest of the industry spoke about hits and fame. Her ideas were too wild, her words too sharp. In interviews, she stopped speaking like a pop star and started sounding like someone standing between worlds. "I've outgrown this version of TLC," she said in one interview. "I can't stand behind something that doesn't represent who I've become." Her words shook fans and terrified her label. To them, she was unpredictable. To herself, she was finally honest. She challenged T-Boz and Chili to a creative duel. 3 solo albums, one from each member, produced by Dallas Austin, with the best-selling project crowned the winner. It wasn't ego, it was evolution. But it was the beginning of the end. Rumors swirled that Suge Knight had become her new mentor, and maybe more. He called her a queen of fire, and promised to give her creative control under Death Row Records. There, Lisa planned her rebirth under a new name, Nina. New identity not applicable. She wanted to start again. No labels, no limits, no lies. But inside, she was tired. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of being strong. Tired of fighting an industry that didn't want her truth, just her image. She started talking about energy and vibrations, about healing the body through herbs and fasting. Friends said she was changing. But maybe she wasn't changing. Maybe she was finally coming home to herself. Lisa had burned through fame, money, and love. What was left wasn't destruction. It was awakening. And that's when she began to search for something deeper. Not a new hit, not a new name, but a new soul. By the early 2000s, Lisa Left Eye Lopes was no longer chasing fame. She was chasing truth. The cameras, the interviews, the flashing lights, they no longer meant anything. She had built an empire from ashes, and now, she wanted to understand the fire itself. Something inside her had shifted. She started fasting, reading spiritual texts, and speaking of energy, vibration, and ancestral healing. Her friends called it a phase. But for Lisa, it was rebirth. The world saw her as the wild one, the troublemaker. But inside, she was a woman trying to heal the child who'd been hurt by fame, by love, by her own demons. She began studying the work of Dr. Sebi, the herbalist from Honduras, who claimed to cure disease through nature. To Lisa, he wasn't a doctor. He was a messenger. She believed his teachings could cleanse her body and her soul. And so, she packed her bags, left Los Angeles behind, and flew to the mountains of Honduras, to a small village called Usha, a healing compound hidden in the jungle. There, surrounded by waterfalls and silence, Lisa fasted on herbs, fruit, and water. She meditated in the sun for hours. She said she could feel her spirit returning. But something else followed her there, a presence she couldn't explain. In her diary, she wrote that she felt a spirit shadowing her, something dark and familiar. One night, while driving, a child suddenly ran into the road, a young boy named Lopes. He was struck and later died. Lisa paid for his funeral, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the spirit meant for her, not him. To her, it was a sign, a warning that death was near. But she wasn't afraid. In her mind, death wasn't an ending, it was transformation, and she was ready for it. While in Honduras, she filmed everything. A documentary she called The Eye Legacy, meant to capture her final evolution. The camera followed her through healing sessions, meditations, even moments of laughter with her group Egypt, young artists she was mentoring under her production label. Her words during those final days were haunting. She spoke about letting go, about leaving the world behind, about making peace with the fire. It was as if she already knew the script was ending. Then came April 25th, 2002. The sun blazed over the Honduran sky. Lisa was in a van with her sister, friends, and cameraman, the camera rolling, as always. On a narrow dirt road, she tried to avoid an oncoming truck. The van swerved, flipped, and collided with 2 trees. The tape kept rolling. In those final frames, you can hear chaos, screaming, and then silence. When the dust cleared, Everyone in the van survived, except Lisa. Thrown from the driver's seat, she died instantly from a massive head injury. She was 30 years old. The world stood still. T-Boz cried for her sister. Chili said she lost her mirror. And fans everywhere felt like they'd lost a piece of themselves. But Lisa had already made peace. Before she died, she told her mother, "If anything happens to me, don't cry. I'll finally be free." Her documentary, recovered from the wreckage, would later reveal her final words. "I feel the presence of something bigger than me. I'm not afraid of it anymore. They say the fire that burns brightest dies the fastest, but some flames never go out." Lisa, left eye. Lopes didn't die in Honduras. She simply ascended, and somewhere, in the rhythm of waterfalls, in the echo of her laughter, and in the millions of hearts she touched, her light still flickers, wild and eternal. In the years since that crash on the dusty Honduran road, Lisa, left eye Lopes, has never really left us. Her body may have rested, but her energy, that fierce, chaotic, radiant light, still moves through the veins of music, through every girl who ever dared to speak her mind, every artist who ever refused to be tamed. TLC went on to finish what they started. They carried her photo on tour, left her mic stand glowing in soft blue light, and when Waterfalls played, the crowd would sing her verse, not as a memory, but as a prayer. Even today, you can feel her presence. In every lyric about self-worth, in every beat that blends hip-hop and soul, in every woman who turns pain into art, Lisa didn't just rap. She redefined what it meant to be fearless. She taught a generation of women that power isn't loud, it's honest. That rebellion isn't chaos, it's clarity. That healing doesn't come from fame, it comes from facing yourself. Her unfinished documentary, The Last Days of Left Eye, became a mirror for millions. A glimpse into a soul who refused to die quietly. And maybe that's the point. Lisa wasn't meant to fade away. She was meant to ignite. When fans visit her resting place, they don't whisper, they laugh, they sing, because Lisa never wanted tears. She wanted energy, movement. She wanted us to keep burning. And so, we do. We see her in the reflection of stage lights, in the pulse of a drum beat, in the courage it takes to stand alone and still shine. Lisa, left eye Lopes, the girl who played with fire and became it. Energy never dies. It only transforms.